Many continue to either criticize or applaud Colin Kaepernick for refusing to stand during the national anthem in order to make a statement about police brutality against African Americans. However, he is not alone in trying to raise awareness about this issue. It turns out that on Thursday night, there were several other players who did the same. Now, Kaepernick's teammate Eric Reid also took a knee during the anthem, and a Seahawks player, Jeremy Lane, refused to stand during another Thursday night game. Now, he was met with heavy boos from the crowd during the pregame warm-ups at the stadium in San Diego, which is home to U.S. Navy and Marine bases. By the way, I should also note that during that game, they had a portion dedicated to the military known as Salute the Military. It was Salute the Military Night. And Colin Kaepernick did take some action to honor our veterans and members of our military, because what he's doing is not an effort to disregard, belittle, or insult the military. What he's doing is trying to raise awareness about what his community is facing and how he wants something to be done by it. Now, according to one tweet from Cam Inman, Kaepernick standing and applauding on 49ers sideline as U.S. veterans are asked to stand during break here in the second quarter. So there's an example of him, applauding and standing on the sideline. Again, it has nothing to do with the veterans. It has everything to do with the issue of police brutality. Now, photos on sports websites and Twitter on Thursday showed Kaepernick wearing socks patterned with images of pigs with what appeared to be police hats. News media reports indicated the photos were taken in mid-August, but the images sparked criticism from some social media users. So there are really two parts of this story that I want to talk about. The first part is him continuing not to stand for the national anthem, and now he's joined by his teammates. And the second part is his choice to wear those socks, which I actually think is not a good idea. He shouldn't wear those socks. But what do you guys think about this whole national anthem thing? We've talked about it quite a bit on the main show, but I want to get your thoughts on it.
First of all, I don't understand why we play the national anthem in front of sporting events. What are sporting events? Sporting events are entertainment, complete. That's all they are. They're nothing. They have nothing to do with the revolution that founded America. They have nothing to do with our government. They have nothing to do with the Marines. It's a frickin' football game that has nothing to do with anything except beer companies making tons of money and the NFL making tons of money. That's all this is. It's entertainment. Do they play the national anthem when you go see a movie? Do they play the national anthem when you go to an ice skating rink? They don't play the national anthem at those places. Why? Because they're selling you bullshit when they play the national anthem before sporting events, right? I went to the Rose Bowl last year, and they fly the stealth bomber over, and then they have the Marines come out, and everybody's like, oh, this. What the hell does that have to do with football, college football? You're already selling booze to college kids. Now you got to sell them war at the same time. So I say good for you. Don't stand up for it. Get rid of the whole goddamn national anthem before a big money-making event that has nothing to do with this country at all.
Yeah, what's interesting is I've been going to a lot of baseball games, and they play the national anthem.
For what?
Before. Yeah, I mean... So
it's a frickin' game.
So that's an interesting perspective that I hadn't heard yet. So I like that. I like that perspective. But here's another thing to consider. Look, on any given day at any given sporting event where the national anthem is either sung or played, there's tons of people that are scratching their asses and guzzling beer while it's happening. They're not honoring it. They're not standing. They're not even noticing or acknowledging it. And no one's ever really up in arms about that, right? What I think this is about more than anything is not that he's disrespecting the country or he's being unpatriotic. I think that argument is meant to distract from what the message is and what he's trying to get across. So whenever people come at him with, oh, you're disrespecting America and you're being unpatriotic, no. Because if you genuinely cared about that, you would be, very concerned about the hundreds, if not thousands, of Americans at sporting events that literally do not respect the national anthem at all.
But he's in the spotlight, so it's obviously a little bit different when he refuses to stand. And by the way, I agree with what he's doing. I think he has every right to obviously protest something in this way, right? And I don't want to get too deeply into it because obviously we've covered this back and forth on the main show plenty of times, right? But as far as as far as what you were saying, if it was like a third string quarterback or someone else that's not in, Colin Kaepernick's shoes, then it would be a little different. It wouldn't, I don't think it would spark this kind of debate. So that's why it's a little different when he does it rather than hundreds of people that don't stand during the national anthem and instead scratch their asses.
The same people that are angry at Colin Kaepernick for not standing during the national anthem because of his, reasoning for raising awareness for the black community, those same people that are criticizing him would probably applaud an NFL player who refused to stand for the national anthem because he doesn't like Obama and he thinks Obama's a Muslim apologist. Okay? Guaranteed that they would be so happy with an NFL player or any major athlete who would refuse to stand for the national anthem for that political purpose, right? They don't like his political purpose, okay? It makes them uncomfortable. They feel like they're being called out. And I freaking love it. I love it. I hope he sits until we finally do something about it. The fact that we're having a dialogue, I think, is way more valuable than anything that he can possibly do as an athlete.
So you're saying that the right wing is totally missing the point of this and they don't really understand what America's all about?
I don't even think that they're missing the point. I think that they're purposely playing dumb and acting as if this is about him disrespecting America.
But this isn't so wait a minute. Donald Trump wants to make America great again, and we can all get behind that.
Right.
It sounds like this guy wants to make America great, but we can't get behind that, right?
Yeah, it's interesting double standard. More importantly, you have one person running for president constantly criticizing the U.S., talking about how we're not winning,
and
how we're losers. Yeah. And the right wing is like, we're losers. Colin Kaepernick doesn't say any of that. All he does is sit to talk about a serious problem we have in the country, and the same right-wingers are like, oh, how dare he? He's insulting this great nation. What about the person you're supporting to be the next president? All he does is insult this great nation.
Young Turks, we couldn't do it without you.
Please believe me.